The alien detention base floated quietly above a dead gray moon. Its metallic surface shone dimly under the weak light of a distant star. Inside, only the low hum of machines and the faint echo of footsteps filled the air. For most of the Varn soldiers, this was just another day guarding prisoners. But not today. Today something was very wrong. Commander Rethnar walked through the long corridor, his heavy boots clicking on the floor. He was tall and broad, his dark armor scratched from 100 battles. He had fought humans before, but never liked it. They were unpredictable, fierce and dangerous, and now, his soldiers had done something that made his skin crawl. They had captured human children. Not soldiers, not spies, not even adults. Children. The report came only hours ago. Rethnar had read it twice, hoping it was some kind of mistake, but the evidence was clear. 6 human children had been taken from a transport vessel near the mining zone. His soldiers thought it was a simple raid. They didn't realize what they had done. He entered the detention wing. The air smelled cold, metallic, and sharp. The guards stood nervous as he passed by. Everyone had heard the rumors. When humans were attacked, they always came back not for revenge but for justice. And they never stopped. Rethnar's second officer, a young alien named Crix, followed closely behind. "Commander," Crix said quietly, "they're just children. They can't be dangerous." Rethnar stopped walking and turned slowly, his glowing yellow eyes fixed on the young officer. "You think humans care whether it's children or soldiers?" he asked. Crix frowned, confused. "They will come, Crix," Rethnar said, his voice low. "And when they come, there will be no place to hide." He continued walking toward the cells. From inside one of the rooms, a small voice echoed, weak, afraid but still brave. "Please, let us go home," the voice said. Rethnar froze for a second. He had never heard a human child speak before. The words carried something powerful, a strange mix of fear and strength. He looked through the glass window. Inside, 6 children sat together, holding each other close. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. But there was no crying now, only quiet determination. Rethnar felt something twist inside him, a strange feeling he had not known in years. Guilt. One of the children, a girl with short brown hair, stared back at him through the glass. She didn't move, didn't speak, but her eyes were filled with fire. Rethnar looked away, uncomfortable. He turned to his guards. "No harm is to come to them," he said. "Do you understand?" The guards nodded quickly. They could feel the tension in his voice. He left the cell block and walked toward the command chamber. His mind was racing. He knew what would happen next. He had seen it before on other worlds. The humans' reaction when one of their own was taken. Entire cities burned, fleets vanished, empires fell. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they refused to give up in the control room. Alarms blinked softly on the panels. Communications were restricted, as per his order. No signals were going in or out. He wanted no one in the galaxy to know what had happened. Not yet. But he also knew it was useless. Somehow humans always found out. He could almost feel it in the air, the coming storm. Crix stood beside him again. "Commander, do you really think the humans will come for 6 children?" Rethnar looked at him without speaking for a moment. Then he said, "Crix, do you know what happened on Vega Prime?" The young officer shook his head. Rethnar's voice grew colder. "A pirate group took one human girl from a colony there," he said. "The humans sent an entire fleet. They destroyed the pirates, the moon they hit on, and every ship that stood in their way." He turned to the viewing screen where the distant stars glimmered. "They will come, and when they do, we will not survive." The base lights flickered for a moment. Rethnar frowned. "System interference?" he asked. A technician nodded nervously. "Unknown source, Commander." Could be solar radiation. But Rethnar's instincts screamed otherwise. He could almost hear the faint whisper of engines. Far, far away, but coming closer. He clenched his fists. It was too soon. It couldn't be them already, could it? Down in the cells, the children huddled together as the lights dimmed again. The little girl, Emma, whispered softly, "They'll come for us, right?" A small boy beside her nodded. "Yeah, my dad's in the fleet. He'll find us." Their voices were small, but full of faith. Even in the cold dark of space, they believed, and far across the stars, that belief would soon become truth. Back in the command room, Rethnar stared at the dark monitors. He gave one final order: raise all shields, and prepare for contact. Crix looked at him in fear. "Contact with what, Commander?" Rethnar's voice was like a whisper. With the storm, he said, and outside, far beyond the moon's orbit, sensors began to flicker again. This time it wasn't radiation. It was movement, fast, precise, and terrifyingly human. The silence before the uproar was ending. Far across the black sea of stars, the signal reached Earth Command. A single broken transmission carried by static and fear. The words were faint, trembling, but clear enough to break every heart that heard them. Please. Tell my mom I'm sorry. Inside the Fleet Command Center, silence fell. Hundreds of officers turned toward the sound. The transmission repeated, distorted by interference. Please. Tell my mom I'm sorry, then nothing. Only static. No one moved for several seconds. The air itself felt heavy, the kind of silence that comes before an explosion. Admiral Hayes stood at the center of the command floor. A tall man, gray-haired, eyes sharp as ice, he had seen war. Loss and death, but the sound of that small, trembling voice cut deeper than any wound. He looked at the comm officer. Trace that signal. Sir, it's coming from deep space beyond Sector 12. Near the Varn Dominion border, Hayes frowned, his jaw tightening. Get me everything we know about that region, he said. Another officer spoke quietly. Sir, the Varn are active there. That was all he needed to hear. Around the command room, whispers began. Children. The aliens took children? No one would dare. They wouldn't survive if humans find out. Hayes raised his hand for silence. He stepped forward, his voice calm but dangerous. Listen carefully, he said. We don't speculate. We confirm. He turned to the main screen. Get me visual. Within seconds, the room filled with glowing light. A holographic map of the Varn sector spinning in the air. The red dots marked known outposts. The gray ones were unregistered, hidden bases. One of them blinked slowly. The source of the transmission. Hayes stared at it, silent. The officers waited for his command. He finally said, That's where they are. No one questioned him. They didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew what was coming, far above Earth. The massive black warships of the human fleet began to wake. Engines hummed like the growl of some sleeping beast. Rows of red lights blinked across steel corridors. Pilots ran to their ships, engineers sealed reactor cores. In less than an hour, the fleet was ready. The humans did not waste time with warnings. They didn't threaten. They didn't negotiate. They moved on one of the ships. A communications officer listened to the faint echo of that same voice again and again. Please. Tell my mom I'm sorry. She bit her lip. Her eyes wet. Her own son was only 9. She whispered softly to herself. We're coming for you, little one. Meanwhile, deep inside the alien base, Commander Rethnar stood before the view screen. The sensors were still glitching. Unknown movement, unknown signals. He tried to calm his people, maintain formation. Check every system, he ordered, but inside he was uneasy. He could feel it, that human energy, that terrible quiet before they strike. Crix approached, his voice trembling slightly. Commander, we still have no contact from Central Command. Rethnar nodded slowly. They know, he said softly. The humans know. Crix looked confused. How? We jammed every signal. Rethnar's voice was dark. You cannot hide from them, Crix, not when they are angry. On Earth. The massive fleet command room came alive. Every screen glowed, every officer focused. Admiral Hayes stood at the center of it all, his voice calm. Fleet status? All ships online, sir. Awaiting orders. Hayes nodded. Transmit a single message to the Varn Dominion. The comms officer blinked. Message, sir? Hayes looked straight ahead, eyes cold. Send them this, he said. You captured human children. Return them, or we will come. The message was sent into the dark. Simple, short and final, no threats, no anger, just promise. Hours later, in the alien command hall, the message arrived. The Varn Council members gathered around the holographic projection. Rethnar stood in silence as the words played again and again. You captured human children. Return them or we will come. Some officers laughed nervously. Humans bluff, one said. They can't send ships here without being detected. Rethnar said nothing. He had seen what humans did on Vega Prime. He had seen them turn a pirate fleet into dust. He had seen them destroy an entire planet to save a single colony. He turned slowly toward the council. Laugh while you can, he said, because when they arrive, you will forget what laughter is, back on Earth. Admiral Hayes walked into the observation deck. He looked out at the stars, so peaceful, so quiet. No one would think a storm was coming. He remembered his own daughter, 7 years old, waiting for him back home. He couldn't imagine her alone, scared, surrounded by strangers. He clenched his fist. He had seen many wars, but this one felt personal. It wasn't about territory or pride. It was about family, about the unbreakable human bond. "Sir," an officer's voice came through the comms. "All fleets are in position." Hayes nodded. "Good," he said softly. "Let's bring them home." And then the stars began to move. Hundreds of human ships cut through the void like silent shadows. Engines glowed faintly blue, weapons cold and ready. They moved without broadcasting, without announcing themselves. No one knew they were coming, not yet, on the alien moon. The base sensors started flashing again. "Unknown readings," a technician cried out. "Direction?" Rethnar demanded. "Every direction." "Commander," the technician replied. Rethnar's blood ran cold. Every direction, that could only mean one thing. The humans had surrounded them, far above the moon. The first human ship decloaked. Its black hull reflected no light, only darkness. The words ESS Retribution glowed faintly on its side. It was not here to threaten. It was here to end. Admiral Hayes stood on its bridge, watching the moon appear on the screen. His face was calm, his heart steady. He spoke in a low voice. "Begin silent approach. Weapons cold. Shields up." The crew nodded. There would be no warning, no broadcast, no mercy. On the alien base, alarms began to scream. Rethnar looked up at the sky through the viewing dome. Tiny lights appeared, one after another, until the darkness was full of them. "They're here," he whispered. His second officer stared in horror. "So many. How did they get here so fast?" Rethnar's voice was like stone. They were already coming. The first tremor hit the base as the human fleet entered low orbit. No attack yet, just presence, the kind of silence that felt louder than any explosion. Rethnar felt it deep inside his chest, the weight of what had begun, and somewhere in the detention cell, little Emma looked up at the ceiling. Her small voice whispered, "They found us." The humans had heard the message. And now they were here. The message was no longer a cry for help. It was a warning to the entire galaxy the hunt had begun. The alien High Council chamber was alive with panic. Holographic screens filled the air with flashing warnings and red alerts. Dozens of Varn officers shouted over each other, every voice trying to explain what no one could truly believe. The humans had arrived, and they were everywhere. From the massive windows of the orbital tower, the stars no longer looked peaceful. They were broken by black shapes moving silently through the void. Human ships, large and small, encircling the sector like a steel storm, each one pulsing with quiet power, waiting. Commander Rethnar stood near the center of the room, his face pale beneath his armor. He had tried to warn them, but they didn't listen. A council member pounded the table with his clawed hand. "This is impossible," he shouted. "They cannot reach us this fast." Rethnar turned his eyes toward him, calm but cold. "You don't understand humans," he said softly. "When they want something, distance means nothing." The younger officers still laughed nervously. "They wouldn't attack over children," one said, trying to sound brave. "They will demand ransom or negotiation." Rethnar's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "No, they will not demand," he said. "They will take." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone could feel it. The tension, the fear, the wrongness of the air itself. The base lights flickered again. The power systems were strained. Something out there was interfering with their network. A soft, rhythmic pulse ran through the floor. Human signal interference. They were cutting the aliens off, system by system, piece by piece. A technician shouted from the console, "Commander, incoming transmission, human frequency." The officers froze. "Put it on," Rethnar said quietly. A faint voice echoed through the chamber, calm, steady, cold. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. No music, no threats, no emotion, just quiet control. You have taken what is ours," the voice said. "You have 7 hours to return them." The transmission ended. No static, no repeat, just silence. The council looked at each other in disbelief. 7 hours? Someone whispered. "They can't possibly mean—" Rethnar interrupted. "They mean it." He turned toward the window again, watching as the black ships moved into position. "They are not asking, they are warning." Meanwhile, in the detention level, the children sat close together. The lights flickered above them. Shadows dancing on the walls. Emma looked at the others. her voice calm even though her hand shook. "My dad said humans don't give up," she whispered. The smallest boy nodded. He said, "If someone hurts us, the whole fleet comes." And above them, that fleet was already surrounding the moon. Silent and patient, back in the council room, panic turned to argument. "We must surrender the children," one of the elder Varn shouted. "No," another replied. "If we give them up, the humans will still attack." Rethnar slammed his hand on the table. "Enough," he said. "You fools don't understand what you've done." He pointed toward the holographic projection of the captured transport. "You thought it was a simple raid. But you didn't check your target." His voice grew louder, more furious. "You captured human children. The one thing they will never forgive," a younger commander sneered. "Why do humans care so much about offspring?" Rethnar turned on him like a storm. "Because to them children are everything," he said. "They fight for them, they die for them, and if you harm one of them, they will burn your entire empire to ash." For a moment, the room was silent. Every officer stared at him. Finally understanding the scale of their mistake, the words hung heavy in the air. The mistake of the century, one that could end their species, outside in the black sea of stars. The human ships began to move slow, deliberate, precise. Their engines glowed faintly blue, and in perfect silence, they formed a circle around the moon base. The aliens watched the radar in horror as hundreds of small dots appeared. "Every exit route blocked," the technician whispered. "No communication with the outer colonies. They've isolated us completely." Rethnar closed his eyes. It was already too late. The humans were not here to threaten. They were here to end it. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Pirates, smugglers, and traders whispered across the black channels. "The humans are moving," they said. "Someone touched their young." Every empire, every government listened in silence, because everyone knew what that meant. The humans were feared not for their strength, but for their heart. When that heart was broken, it became unstoppable on the human flagship. Admiral Hayes stood watching the alien moon on the main screen. The image zoomed in, showing faint lights in defense towers. He spoke calmly. "Target power systems, disable weapons. No unnecessary destruction." The officers nodded. They understood. This was not conquest. This was rescue, down in the alien base. Alarms screamed as the lights flickered and screens went dark. One by one, control systems failed. Rethnar shouted orders. "Manual override." Reroute power. But nothing worked. The humans were already inside their systems. Every door, every defense, every code, overridden. They didn't just bring ships. They brought intelligence, precision, and purpose. The alien fleet above the moon tried to move into defense formation, but before their engines even powered up, the first human signal hit them, a short burst of coded light, invisible to normal scanners within seconds. Half their navigation systems went offline. The alien pilots shouted in confusion, "Controls are dead. We've lost sensors. They're inside our network." In the control hall, Rethnar stared at the chaos. His voice was low, filled with dread. "This isn't war," he said. "This is punishment." Crix looked at him. "Terrified, what do we do, Commander?" Rethnar didn't answer right away. He walked toward the large viewing window, staring at the endless black sky. Somewhere out there, a human child's voice still echoed in his mind. "Please. Tell my mom I'm sorry." He turned back slowly. "We released them," he said, but even as he spoke, the ground shook. The first human strike had begun outside. Brilliant blue light cut across space. Human weapons fired not to destroy, but to disable every shot, perfect, clean, and silent. Alien ships lost power one after another, drifting helplessly. And through that silence came a final human message, calm, clear, and cold. "Return them now." The alien council stared in terror as their screens went black. Rethnar closed his eyes. It was already too late to undo the mistake. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to survive it. He turned to Crix and whispered, "Prepare the prisoners for release." And outside, in the darkness, the human fleet waited like a storm ready to strike. The galaxy would never forget this moment, the day an empire learned what it meant to harm a human child. The day of the mistake of the century. The void above the dead moon shimmered with silent power. Dark shapes began to appear from the shadows of space. One after another, their armor black as obsidian, edges glowing faintly blue. The humans had arrived, the Black Fleet. From the surface of the Varn base, the sight was terrifying. Hundreds of ships moved together without sound, without a single light flashing. No radio chatter, no communication noise, only the deep hum of approaching engines. They moved like shadows made of steel, alive with purpose. And every alien who saw them felt the same thing: fear. Inside the command center, alarms screamed again. Rethnar stood before the main screen, his expression hard but calm. "They've come," he whispered. Crick swallowed nervously beside him. "Commander, are we going to fight?" Rethnar didn't answer right away. He stared at the massive ships forming a perfect circle around the moon. "They aren't giving us a choice," he said. "We already started this war." Far above them, aboard the flagship ESS Retribution, Admiral Hayes watched the moon grow larger on the screen. The light from the alien base flickered like candle fire beneath the black hulls. "Fleet, hold position," he said quietly. Every ship slowed. Drifting into perfect alignment, their formation surrounded the moon entirely. No escape, no chance. They had turned the entire system into a trap. On the alien base, the technicians shouted in panic. "Shields are fluctuating," one cried. "We can't maintain power. The system is being jammed," another voice added. "All long-range scanners are blind, Commander." Rethnar clenched his fists. The humans were not attacking yet, but they were already winning. Crick stared at the screen. The human ships didn't look like anything the Varn had seen before. They were sleek, silent, built for precision, no marks of vanity, no bright colors, only darkness. "They look like ghosts." Crix muttered. Rethnar nodded slowly. "They are ghosts," he said. "The ghosts of vengeance." A deep vibration rolled through the walls. The sound was not an explosion. It was the humans locking the system in orbit. Gravitational anchors, invisible and deadly, were now keeping the moon trapped. No ship could leave, no signal could escape. They were prisoners now. On the flagship bridge, Hayes watched data scroll across the console. Status reports came in from every unit. "Fleet in full control," his tactical officer said. "Enemy communications jammed." "Power interference stable," Hayes nodded, his voice low. "Good," he said. "Now we make them listen." He stepped forward to the comm station. "Transmit this," he ordered. His voice was calm, steady, but beneath it burned the fire of a father, a soldier, a human. "This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Fleet Command," he said. "You have our children." The message echoed through space, carried on silent waves. "Release them now, or you will not survive the next sunrise." Inside the alien base, the message played across every speaker. The voice of Admiral Hayes filled every corridor, every room, every heart. The words were simple, but they carried weight, the kind of weight that crushes empires. Crix looked pale. "They don't bluff." "Do they?" he whispered. Rethnar shook his head slowly. "No, they don't." Above the moon, the human ships began to move again, this time with purpose. Lines of light spread between them, linking their formations. The air itself seemed to vibrate as their weapons powered up. The first wave of drones detached, small and fast. They moved like sparks in the darkness, scanning, mapping, searching. Every structure, every life sign, every weapon. Within minutes, the humans knew everything about the alien base. Every weak point, every passage, every target. Rethnar stared at the readings on his console. "They're scanning us," he said. One of his officers replied in shock. "From this distance? That's impossible." "Not for humans," Rethnar said quietly. A new alarm sounded. "Commander, external defenses are offline." "What?" Rethnar snapped. "We didn't even engage them yet. The humans disabled them remotely," the technician said, his voice trembling. Rethnar closed his eyes. He had warned them this would happen. Now there was no stopping it. Meanwhile, in the detention cells, the children felt the tremors under their feet. Emma looked up at the ceiling, hearing the faint hum of engines above. "They're here," she said softly. The other children huddled close. "Will they get us out?" one asked. Emma nodded, her voice calm but sure. "They always do." Back on the human flagship, Hayes stood still, eyes locked on the tactical display. The alien moon was surrounded completely. No life could enter or leave without human permission. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we're receiving another signal." "From the aliens?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir." Put it through. The alien voice came through the speakers, full of static and fear. This is Commander Rethnar of the Varn Dominion. Hayes said nothing, just listened. Rethnar continued, his voice heavy. We made a mistake. You did more than that, Hayes replied, his tone cold. You took our children. There was silence on the other end. Then Rethnar spoke again. We are preparing to release them. Hayes's eyes narrowed. You have 5 minutes, he said, and cut the transmission. Crix turned to his commander, horrified. They're serious, he said. Rethnar nodded. They were serious the moment we touched their young. The alien guards rushed to open the detention cells. The children flinched as the heavy doors slid open. Emma stepped forward slowly. Are you taking us home? She asked. The alien soldier hesitated. Yes, he said quietly. We're taking you home. Above them, the human fleet began its descent. Hundreds of dropships detached from the main cruisers. Their thrusters burned blue as they entered the moon's thin atmosphere. They came down like falling stars, silent, unstoppable. Inside the base, the floor trembled again. Crix looked at the screens, his voice full of disbelief. They're landing. Rethnar took a deep breath. Then this is the end, he said. The first human dropship touched down near the outer walls. Its doors opened, and the air filled with the sound of boots hitting metal. Black-armored Marines stepped out, their visors glowing faintly white. They moved with the precision of machines but the hearts of soldiers. Each carried a weapon but did not fire. They moved carefully, scanning, clearing, advancing, every motion silent, every breath controlled. They weren't here to destroy. They were here to recover. Inside the base, the lights flickered again as human code overrode alien systems. Doors opened automatically for them. Security cameras went offline. And across the main hall, Rethnar could hear the distant sound of footsteps. Slow, steady, inevitable. The humans were inside. He turned to Crix one last time. Tell the others to stand down, he said. Crix hesitated. But Commander, do it, Rethnar ordered. We started this, but we will not end it with more blood. Through the cracked view panels, he could see the human ships above the horizon, dozens of them glowing like silent angels. He whispered softly to himself, this is how legends are born. And far below, in the dusty corridors, the human Marines reached the detention wing. The first door opened, revealing 6 frightened children. Emma blinked in the bright light as a Marine knelt before her. His voice was gentle through the helmet speaker. You're safe now, he said. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I told them you'd come, she whispered. Outside, the black fleet hung above the moon like judgment itself. No music, no words, no sound, only power, patience, and purpose. The universe watched in silence as humanity moved, and every empire, every species, understood one truth that day. If you take what belongs to humanity, they will come for you, and they will not stop. The arrival of the Black Fleet had changed everything. The air inside the alien detention wing was cold and heavy. Dust hung in thin layers, glowing faintly under flickering lights. The hum of machines had gone quiet now, replaced by the slow rhythm of approaching footsteps. The sound of something powerful, disciplined, and human. Emma sat close to the other children, holding the youngest boy's hand. He was trembling, his eyes wide with fear. She whispered softly, It's okay. They're here. The metal door hissed open, and light poured into the dark room. A figure stood in the doorway, tall and armored, his visor glowing white. For a moment, the children didn't move. Then Emma's eyes filled with tears. You came, she said. The Marine stepped forward slowly, kneeling so his voice was level with hers. We never leave our own, he said gently. The words were simple, but to the children, they were everything. Behind the first Marine, others entered, scanning the corners, checking for traps. Their movements were silent, precise, calm. They had trained for war, but this mission was different. This time, they were rescuing hope itself. On the upper levels of the base, Commander Rethnar watched through the security feed. He saw the humans moving through the corridors like shadows of steel. No wasted motion, no hesitation. It was not chaos. It was control. He turned to Crix, his voice quiet. They are inside, completely. Crix looked pale. What will they do to us? Rethnar sighed. That depends on whether they believe we deserve to live. Back in the detention hall, the Marines surrounded the children. They handed them small oxygen masks, wrapping them in silver heat blankets. Emma looked up at one of the soldiers. Are we going home? She asked. The Marine smiled behind his helmet. Yes, sweetheart, you're going home. But deep in the ship bay, the situation was not safe yet. Human sensors picked up something strange. Energy spikes, hidden heat signatures. The aliens had not completely surrendered. A few rogue soldiers still believed they could fight back. And they were preparing to launch a desperate attack. Admiral Hayes, watching from the flagship above, saw the alert flash across his command screen. Hostile movement detected in Quadrant 4, the tactical officer reported. Hayes's voice was calm. Tell the ground teams to extract fast. He stared at the live feed of the base. Every second counted. Rethnar slammed his hand on the console. Who authorized this? He shouted. A panicked officer replied. The lower guard units, sir. They refused to surrender. Rethnar's eyes burned with anger. Fools! He growled. They will get us all killed. He turned to Crix. Get to the hangar. Stop them before they fire. Crix hesitated for a moment. Commander, the humans. Go! Rethnar ordered. This isn't about survival anymore, it's about doing the right thing. Down below, in the hangar, the rogue Varn soldiers were arming the plasma cannons. Their faces twisted in fear and pride. They'll never take us alive, one hissed. But before he could finish his sentence, the lights went out. The ground shook as the main doors exploded inward. A team of human Marines stormed in. Their weapons raised but not firing. Stand down, one of them shouted. The aliens froze for a moment, then chaos erupted. A blinding flash lit up the hangar as plasma bolts hit the floor. Sparks rained down. Smoke filled the air. The humans moved fast, dodging, returning controlled bursts of stun fire. Rethnar and Crix arrived at the scene just as one of the cannons overloaded. A deafening roar filled the chamber. Crix dove behind a barrier as the weapon exploded. Rethnar shielded his face from the heat, shouting over the noise, Cease fire! Stop this madness! Through the haze, a human Marine stepped forward. His weapon still lowered, Rethnar recognized him immediately. The calm, steady voice of the same officer who had spoken to him earlier. Admiral Hayes's ground commander. The two locked eyes across the smoky hangar. For a moment, everything went still. The human raised his hand, signaling his men to hold fire. Rethnar took a breath, his voice breaking. They're releasing the children, he said. Don't kill them. The Marine nodded slowly. Then make sure no one else dies, he said, above the chaos. Admiral Hayes watched the data streams update in real time. Hangar secured, minimal casualties, his officer reported. Hayes exhaled, relief flickering in his eyes. He looked out the window at the distant moon below. Stay calm, keep it clean, he said quietly. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a rescue mission, but one built on fire and fury. Meanwhile, the children were led through the corridors by the Marines. Their small footsteps echoed against the metal floor. They passed wrecked walls and broken lights, but none of them looked afraid anymore. They held their heads high, following the humans who had come for them. Emma turned to one of the Marines, her voice small but firm. Why did you come all this way? She asked. The Marine smiled behind his helmet. Because you're one of us, he said. She looked down, tears filling her eyes. Those words would stay with her forever. In the command center, Rethnar watched as the last human dropships lifted off from the base. He could see the tiny figures of children being carried aboard. He turned to Crix. It's over, he said. But Crix shook his head. No, Commander, he said softly. It's just beginning. Rethnar looked at him confused. Crix continued. The humans will tell everyone what happened here. Rethnar nodded slowly. Yes, he said, and they will never let the galaxy forget. Outside, the human fleet moved like a living storm. Every ship turned in unison, engines glowing bright as they began their return path. The Black Fleet had done its job. The children were safe. But their silence spoke louder than any victory song. On board the flagship, Admiral Hayes stood in the medical bay. The children sat wrapped in warm blankets, small cups of water in their hands. Emma looked up at him. Are we going home now? She asked. Hayes knelt beside her, Yes, he said softly. Home. For a moment. The hardened admiral smiled, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 battles but still finds light in a child's eyes. Outside the window, the alien moon was shrinking behind them. The human fleet glided away, leaving only silence in its wake. No explosions, no wreckage, no cruelty, just silence. The silence of warning. A warning the galaxy would remember for generations. In the ruins below, Rethnar stood on the viewing deck. He watched the humans disappear into the black sea of stars. He whispered to himself. They came for their children. He looked down at his hands, trembling slightly, and they will come again if anyone dares to touch them. The hope that had begun in the hearts of 6 small children now burned across the galaxy. It wasn't just a story of rescue, it was proof. Proof that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships, or their power, or their technology. It was their love, their unshakable will to protect their own, and that hope, born from fear and fire, would echo through every world that heard their name. The children's hope had become humanity's warning, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The stars outside the Black Fleet shimmered like silent witnesses. The children were safe, asleep inside the flagship, wrapped in warm light and quiet dreams, but Admiral Hayes was not asleep. He stood alone in the observation deck, watching the void beyond the glass. The reflection of his own tired face merged with the endless blackness of space. The rescue was complete, but peace was far from reach. In his hand he held a small pendant, a silver locket belonging to one of the rescued children. Inside it was a tiny picture, a smiling family. Long before the abduction, he closed it gently, his jaw tightening. They thought they could take our children and walk away, he whispered. Behind him the doors opened and Commander Alina Trent stepped inside. She was calm, composed, but her eyes were sharp. Sir, she said quietly. We have intercepted Varn communications. Hayes turned slowly. What are they saying? They're denying everything, Alina replied. They're telling the galaxy that we invaded them without reason. Hayes didn't move for a moment. Then he said, Then we show them reason. Alina nodded grimly. The Council wants proof, Admiral, she said. They'll have it, Hayes answered. Every second of this operation was recorded. He turned back to the stars. But before that, he said softly, we finish what they started. Meanwhile, in the Varn Dominion's capital world, chaos spread like wildfire. News of the captured children and the arrival of the Black Fleet had reached every sector. The Supreme Council of Varn met in silence. Holograms of frightened governors flickered around the central chamber. One shouted, Humans are monsters. They destroyed our outpost, another replied, You fool. We brought this on ourselves. The room erupted into arguments. Fear and pride battled inside every voice, high above them in the orbital palace. Supreme Chancellor Dravkor listened to the noise. His long fingers tapped against the armrest of his throne. He was old, powerful, and cunning. He had seen many wars. But none like this. Finally, he stood, his voice echoing across the chamber. Enough, he said. The voices went silent immediately. Do you understand what you have done? He continued. You provoked a species that was still young, but dangerous. He turned toward the window, staring out at the fleet gathering around the homeworld. They do not conquer for power, he said. They fight for family. Back aboard the human flagship, Admiral Hayes entered the strategy room. The holographic table displayed dozens of red markers, all Varn military outposts connected to the abduction project. Commander Alina looked at him. These are the bases responsible for the operation, she said. Hayes nodded slowly. Then these are the ones that fall, he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were cold. This isn't revenge, he said. It's justice. Fleet orders spread like wildfire. The Black Fleet moved once again, but this time not for rescue. They moved for retribution across the stars. Human ships began to appear in systems that once believed themselves safe. The Varn stations, built to monitor and trade, were suddenly under siege, but there were no mass bombings, no civilians harmed. Human precision strikes targeted only military assets. Power grids went offline, weapon platforms shut down. Everywhere the humans struck, the same message was transmitted. This is for the children. Rethnar, now stripped of his command and under house arrest, watched the reports on a dim holoscreen. He saw human fleets dismantling the Varn's military one base at a time. Crix entered quietly, his voice shaking. They're not killing everyone, he said. Rethnar nodded. No, he replied. They're making us watch. Across the galaxy, the storm of humanity grew stronger. Their fleets didn't just destroy, they demonstrated. Every operation was recorded, broadcasted, shown to every corner of space. They wanted everyone to see the difference. Humans didn't conquer for greed, they acted for principle. And that made them even more terrifying back on Earth. Billions watched live transmissions from deep space. The return of the children had been celebrated, but now the people demanded more. Crowds filled the streets, holding banners, chanting one message: never again. Families stood together, hands raised toward the skies. They had seen what the aliens did, and humanity stood united like never before. Inside the Fleet Command chamber, Hayes stood before the communication screen. The United Earth Council members appeared. "Admiral," said the chairwoman, "you've gone too far. The galaxy is panicking." Hayes's eyes met hers. "Steady and calm, with respect, Madam Chair," he said. "The galaxy should be panicking. Fear keeps them from trying again." He turned off the transmission and faced his officers. "Prepare Operation Dawnlight," he ordered. Alina looked up, surprised. "Sir, that's a full dismantling strike," she said. Hayes nodded slowly. "Exactly." As the fleet prepared, a strange silence filled the void. Foreign patrol ships, once arrogant and aggressive, now avoided all contact. Their comm channels were filled with rumors. Humans that moved faster than sensors could track. Ships that appeared from nowhere. That disabled fleets without firing a shot. And above it all, a name began to spread, whispered in fear. The Black Storm, they called them. Because wherever they passed, order was swept away. Rethnar stared at the sky from his cell. He could see the faint trails of destruction in orbit, burning wrecks of once proud Varn cruisers. He closed his eyes. "They will not stop," he said quietly. Crix, standing guard outside, asked, "Do they want our extinction?" Rethnar shook his head. "No," he said. "They want understanding." But understanding came too late for the Varn Dominion. In a single week, their empire fell apart. Trade routes closed, colonies rebelled, their fleets disbanded. The galaxy watched as the once mighty Varn were forced to their knees. And yet not a single human world celebrated with joy. There was no laughter, no music, only silence. In the flagship bridge, Admiral Hayes stood before the central window. He watched the last Varn military station drift into flames. Alina approached him quietly. "It's done," she said. Hayes didn't respond for a moment. Then he said softly, "No, not yet." He turned to the communications officer. "Send this message to every Varn frequency," he ordered. The officer nodded. "Recording?" "Sir?" Hayes looked straight into the lens, his voice calm but firm. "This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Fleet Command," he said. "Your empire is broken. Your armies are gone." He paused for a moment. His eyes filled with quiet fire. "We did not come for conquest. We came for our children." He leaned closer, his tone low and deadly. "Remember that the next time you think of Earth," the message spread through every corner of the Varn Dominion. It was replayed, analyzed, feared, and remembered. Entire generations of aliens would later call it the warning. Back in his quarters, Hayes finally sat down. The pendant still in his hand, he opened it again. Looking at the little picture, he whispered, "They're safe now." But deep down, he knew the galaxy had changed forever. Far away, on a quiet colony world, Emma woke from her sleep. The stars above Earth twinkled through her window. She pressed the pendant she had been given by the Marines to her chest, and smiled softly. "They came for us," she whispered. "They always will." Outside, the night sky shimmered faintly with the passing of distant ships. Human ships, silent guardians watching from the dark. And as the universe turned, every race knew one truth. The storm had broken and humanity had risen. The galaxy had gone quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy, fearful kind, the kind that lingers after thunder. When the air still trembles with what it remembers, the Varn Dominion was gone. Their fleet scattered, their pride shattered. But the echo of humanity's storm still rolled through the stars. On distant worlds, alien governments held emergency councils. Across dozens of star systems, holographic faces argued in panic. "The humans are dangerous," one shouted. "They destroyed an empire in days," another replied. "But they spared civilians," a third said, his tone softer. "They didn't come for power." The first alien leaned forward, his eyes cold. "No, they came for blood." But no one dared to say what everyone already knew. The humans had only acted because of their children. And if that was how they fought for 6 small lives, no one wanted to imagine what they would do for billions. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship ESS Retribution, the Black Fleet drifted silently near the edge of Varn space. Admiral Hayes sat in the war room, the light from the holotable glowing across his face. It had been a week since the last strike. The Varn had surrendered completely, their channels flooded with pleas for peace, but Hayes knew this wasn't over. He could feel it. A storm like that doesn't end. It echoes. Commander Alina Trent entered quietly. "Holding a datapad, sir," she said. "We're receiving transmissions from other civilizations." Hayes looked up slowly. "Go on," he said. "They're curious," Alina replied. "Some are afraid, but some are reaching out." Hayes frowned. "Reaching out for what?" Alina hesitated. "An alliance," she said. Hayes leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "Of course," he said quietly. "They fear what we can do, so now they want to stand beside us." But among those new voices, there was one different, a signal that didn't match any known code. It was faint, slow, almost like a whisper through static. The ship's AI flagged it as non-hostile but unknown. When decrypted, it formed a single line of text. "We need to talk." Hayes stared at the message. "Where did it come from?" he asked. "Unclear," the officer said. "But it's not Varn. It's something older." Older, Hayes thought. That word echoed in his mind. Hours later, a lone ship appeared near the edge of human territory. It was small, silver, shaped like flowing glass. Unlike anything human sensors had ever seen. No weapons detected, no shields raised. It moved slowly, like it was testing the space around it. Admiral Hayes ordered the fleet to hold position. "Open a channel," he said. For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, calm, melodic, not human. "This is Envoy Sarath of the Qadari Conquered," it said. "We seek to speak with the one called Hayes." The bridge went silent. Alina looked at the Admiral, eyes wide. "The Qadari?" she whispered. "They've been silent for centuries." Hayes nodded slowly. "Until now," he said. He stepped closer to the comm station. "This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Fleet Command," he said. "You have my attention." The alien envoy appeared on the holo display. Tall, luminous, with faint light pulsing beneath translucent skin. Its eyes were deep and endless. "Like wells of calm energy, Admiral Hayes," it said. "We watched what you did to the Varn." Hayes said nothing. The envoy continued. "You changed the balance of the galaxy." Hayes crossed his arms. "They kidnapped our children," he said. The envoy nodded slowly. "Yes." "And you answered." There was no judgment in the alien's tone, only understanding. "Many feared you," Sarath said. "But we did not." Hayes narrowed his eyes slightly. "Then what do you want?" The envoy tilted its head. "To warn you," it said. The room went cold. Alina stepped closer. "Warn us? About what?" she asked. Sarath's glowing eyes flickered. "The Varn were not acting alone," it said. A silence followed, sharp as a blade. "They serve something greater," Sarath continued. "A power from beyond your mapped stars." Hayes frowned. "Explain," he said. Sarath looked straight into the camera. "They call themselves the Vornathi," it said. "And they are coming." The air in the command deck seemed to vanish for a moment. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. Hayes's voice stayed calm. "We've never heard of them," he said. "You will," Sarath replied softly. "They watch from the void between galaxies. They manipulate young races, turning them into pawns." Alina's voice trembled slightly. "Are you saying they made the Varn take our children?" Sarath nodded. "They gave them the order. They wanted to see how humans would respond." Hayes's expression darkened. "So we were a test," he said. "Yes," Sarath replied. "And you passed." That single line sent a chill through the room. The envoy's tone was calm, but behind it was something deeper. Fear. "They wanted to measure your will," Sarath said, "to know what kind of threat you could become." "And now they know," Hayes muttered. Sarath nodded. "And that is why you must prepare," it said. "Because now they will come for you directly, for the first time in days." Admiral Hayes felt the cold weight of uncertainty press against his chest. He had fought wars, saved lives, even brought empires to their knees. But this was different. This was something older, bigger. "Watching from the dark edges of the universe. Why are you helping us?" he asked quietly. Sarath's glowing eyes softened. "Because once, long ago," it said, "we were tested too, and we failed." Hayes stared at the hologram. The envoy continued. "The Vornathi do not conquer worlds with fleets or weapons. They conquer minds. They whisper promises, twist leaders. Plant wars? That is what they did to the Varn, Alina whispered. So the Varn were never truly the enemy. Sarath nodded. They were the first victims. Hayes straightened slowly. Then we'll make sure we're the last, he said. Sarath inclined its head slightly. Then humanity must stand ready, it said. Because they will come in silence, not war. At first, the transmission flickered. Before it ended, Sarath's voice came one last time, softer than a breath. When the stars begin to dim, Admiral, it said, that is when they arrive. And then the signal vanished. The bridge was silent again. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Alina said quietly, "What do we do now?" Hayes looked out the window at the endless sea of stars. His reflection faint in the glass. "We prepare," he said. "Because if they wanted to test humanity," he continued, "they're about to see what happens when humanity fights back." Outside, the Black Fleet began to move again, not in anger this time, but in purpose. Ships reformed their patterns, systems recalibrated. The quiet hum of engines filled the void once more, from orbit. The fleet looked like a storm gathering in the dark, a storm waiting for the next lightning strike, far away, beyond the galactic rim. In a place where stars burned cold and light bent like mist, something stirred. Eyes older than time opened in the dark. Watching, calculating, smiling, the test had ended. The real game was about to begin. The echoes of the storm had reached the void, and now the void was answering back. The stars had never looked so still. From the bridge of the ESS Retribution, Admiral Hayes stared into the dark void beyond known space. The words of the Qadari envoy echoed in his mind again and again. When the stars begin to dim, that is when they arrive. He didn't know what that meant yet, but every instinct, every battle memory, told him the galaxy was holding its breath. The storm that humanity had unleashed was about to meet another, one that had been waiting far longer. Commander Alina Trent stood beside him. "Scouts report strange readings in Sector 19, she said quietly. "Energy distortions, gravitational ripples. But no visible ships," Hayes frowned. "Stealth fields?" "Not like anything we've seen," she replied. "It's like space itself is bending." Across the fleet, engineers and scientists worked around the clock. They studied the strange signals, the faint waves pulsing through the void. It wasn't random, it was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, and it was getting stronger. On one of the smaller research vessels, Dr. Ren Ibarra, chief xenophysicist, stared at his data screen in disbelief. "The signal isn't just a wave," he said into his comm. "It's communication." "What kind?" his assistant asked. Ren's voice was quiet. "It's like they're calling something." Back aboard the flagship, Hayes' command table lit up with a sudden burst of red alerts. "Multiple contacts," shouted the tactical officer. Hayes turned sharply. "Where?" "Everywhere," the officer replied. "They're just appearing." Outside the windows, the stars began to flicker, not like lights, like something was swallowing them. Patches of darkness spread across the sky. Moving like living shadows, the fleet's sensors went wild. "Alarms blaring! Shields up!" Alina ordered. "Power to full," Hayes commanded. But as soon as the words left his mouth, the ship's lights dimmed. Power drain, total. Silent, unstoppable. Then, for the first time, they saw them, the Vornathi. They didn't arrive in ships or with engines. They bled into existence. Shapes of black mist with faint silver veins. Their forms twisted and shifted, half energy, half matter. No solid edges, no eyes, and yet everyone who looked at them felt like they were being watched. "They're not attacking," Alina whispered. "Then what are they doing?" Hayes asked before anyone could answer. A low hum filled the bridge. It wasn't sound. It was vibration. Something was pressing against their minds. Voices, faint and cold, whispered through the static. "We see you," they said. "We remember your fire." Officers clutched their heads. Crying out, the psychic pressure was unbearable. Hayes gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand. "Block their frequency," he shouted. "Jam the channel." But the AI replied, "There is no frequency to block." The Vornathi were not communicating through machines. They were speaking directly to the human mind. Testing, probing, learning. Every second they waited, more appeared, hundreds, then thousands, a storm of shadows surrounding the fleet. On the far edge of the formation, one of the human ships suddenly exploded. Not from a weapon, but from within. Its reactor had gone critical without reason. Then another ship vanished, pulled into a hole of pure blackness. The void had opened its mouth and it was hungry. Retreat. One officer shouted. Hayes slammed his hand on the table. No! He barked. We don't run. He turned to Alina. Prepare countermeasures. What kind? She asked. The human kind, he said. Adapt. Improvise. Fight back. The Marines aboard the Retribution manned every defense system manually. Without AI assistance, they fought with instinct. They fired plasma bursts into the dark, not to kill, but to light up what they couldn't see. And in that flickering blue light, they discovered something strange. The shadows recoiled from certain frequencies. Specific patterns of energy. Hayes saw it and realized. They can't handle chaos. Human music, static noise, emotional resonance. The unpredictable power of the human mind. That was their weakness. Broadcast wideband, Hayes ordered. Use audio patterns, all frequencies, everything. Within moments, the fleet's communication systems roared to life. Old Earth songs, static, voices shouting across channels. It wasn't organized. It wasn't clean. It was human. And the shadows screamed. They twisted in agony, their forms shattering into light. For the first time, the Vornathi pulled back. The fleet was bathed in blue light again as systems restarted. Alina looked at Hayes, astonished. Did we just hurt them? Hayes nodded slowly. They wanted to understand what makes us human, he said. Now they know. But the battle wasn't over. The largest of the shadow forms remained, massive, coiling like a god born from black fire. It spoke with 1,000 voices. You are loud, it said. You are dangerous, Hayes stepped forward. And we're not done yet, he said. He activated the fleet-wide transmission. Every ship's external speakers came online, and the voice of humanity echoed across the void. This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Fleet Command, he said. We are not your experiment. We are not your servants. He raised his head, eyes fierce. You wanted to test us. Well, here's your result. He gestured to the fleet around him, lights burning like stars reborn. We survive, he said, no matter what comes. We endure. The giant shadow paused, its form trembling as if uncertain. Then slowly it began to fade. Its voice softened, almost curious. Then perhaps you are ready, it whispered. For what? Alina asked under her breath, but the entity didn't answer. It vanished along with the rest. One by one the stars returned. The darkness withdrew. Silence filled the bridge again. Only the hum of the engines remained. The crew stood in disbelief. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Alina said softly, Was that a victory? Hayes looked out at the endless stars. Maybe, he said. Or maybe it was just another test. Days later, reports spread across human space. Every sensor confirmed the same thing. The Vornathi were gone. But deep space probes picked up faint readings beyond the galactic rim. Not hostile, not aggressive, just watching. As if something far greater was still waiting. In the quiet of his quarters, Hayes finally rested. The locket still in his hand, he opened it one last time, looking at the smiling face of the child it belonged to. He whispered, You're safe now. Then, after a moment, added, For now, down on Earth. The children who had been rescued grew older. They became storytellers, scientists, explorers, and every one of them carried a piece of that storm in their hearts. Emma, now grown, stood one night beneath the same stars that had once terrified her. She smiled softly and whispered, They came for us once. Then she looked up, her eyes full of quiet fire. And we'll be ready when they come again, far across the galaxy. In the space between galaxies, the Vornathi stirred again, faintly. Their whispers moved like wind through dead stars. They are not like the others, one voice said. No, another replied. They are something new. Then silence again, deep and eternal. Humanity had survived its first shadow war, and in doing so, it had earned something no other race ever had, the respect and fear of the darkness itself. The storm had passed, but in its wake a legend was born, a legend that would echo forever in the void, of the day humanity faced the shadows and refused to bow, when an alien empire dares to cross humanity's final line. By capturing human children, they awaken a force they could never understand. Humanity unites under one banner, not for conquest, but for vengeance. What begins as an abduction turns into a galactic storm that shakes every star system. This is not just a war story, it's a story about what it truly means to be human. In this gripping HFY Sci-Fi saga, witness how compassion becomes power, and how love turns into a weapon no alien can measure. The aliens thought they were studying a primitive race, but what they found was something terrifying. the unstoppable will of humanity. From deep space battles to emotional confrontations, every moment will keep you on edge till the very end. If you love epic storytelling, interstellar revenge, and moments that give you chills, this video is for you. Stay tuned as the story unfolds in 8 breathtaking parts filled with suspense, sacrifice, and cosmic mystery. Humanity may be fragile, but when provoked, we are limitless. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more HFY Sci-Fi stories that redefine the galaxy.